Looking at the other side of the market for labour now, we're going to be looking at the supply of labour, so employees and how the supply of labour to particular industries is determined, and we're going to be looking at the price elasticity of supply as well. So here's the specification objectives. So supply of labour. When I speak to students, a lot of the time they mention monetary factors being really important, and they are, because we work to be able to earn a living and to be able to provide for our basic, human needs. So that's going to be an important factor, and higher wages suggest that you can buy more and provide for more of those needs and wants. So we'd expect there to be a higher supply for jobs where they've got higher wages, but we'll have a look at some other factors as well that can determine the supply. But remember, wages aren't just the wages and salaries aren't the only things. It can be kind of additional payments as well, such as commission or bonuses. The supply of labour is also determined by convenience and flexibility. So the more convenient and flexible a job tends to be the more supply of labour that you have to it. So more people should be able to work, you kind of 9 to 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, than there are possibly people who are willing to work 1 a.m. to 5 o'clock in the morning, 7 days a week. So that convenience and flexibility, and also like maybe an employer who's willing to let people adjust their working patterns to their life, that would be a big draw for a lot of people, I think, especially parents who have young children. So we tend to see more supply where a job's very flexible. Some jobs in certain cultures are held in very high status. So doctors tend to be held in very high status. Understandably, they're saving people's lives. It's a pretty amazing thing to do. And then there are jobs that aren't held in very high status. So sex workers, very low status in most kind of cultures, although it does depend upon the culture. Promotion prospects as well. Most people, when they go into a job, they like to think that they're not going to be doing the exact same job for the next 50 years, that there are going to be promotional opportunities or opportunities to increase their salary, increase their skills, increase their experiences. Some people are willing to forego a high salary so that they can get job security, and they know that their job is going to be available, and they know they're going to be able to be in that job for the next 20 years or so. So a lot of people would be willing to forego that insecurity and stress of not knowing whether you're going to have a salary that month. Working conditions can make a big impact, can have a big impact on your life. I think when I speak to people when they've moved jobs, and I ask them about how their new job's going, it's very often working conditions that they're describing. The physical location, maybe the way they're spoken to, the way they're treated. This is a very, very important factor for people. Holidays and leisure time as well. We get the standard amount that the government give out. I think it's about 20 days would be a standard amount, but some jobs have more holiday and leisure time. So teaching theoretically has a lot of leisure time, but I end up doing a lot of work during my holidays. Fringe benefits, or sometimes I call them fridge benefits, because fringe benefits often tend to be tied around free food. So Google give all free food to their employees, but other fringe benefits could be kind of company cars and discount schemes on cycling to work and those types of things as well. Maybe a fringe benefit could actually be a parking space as well. Job satisfaction would be a big thing. The more satisfied people are, or the more satisfaction they can get from a job and worthwhile feeling, more supply there tends to be. So elasticity of supply of labour, exactly the same as your PES equation, but I've added this word labour in. So percentage change in quantity of labour supplied divided by percentage change in wage rate rather than price, but the wage rate is just the price for labour. And the factors that can influence the elasticity of supply of labour are the skills and qualifications needed. So I'll just go through a run through all of them: the length of the training period, the sensification, and the time period. So in terms of skills and qualifications required, if you need lots of skills, it tends to be quite inelastic. So So I always get students to think, imagine that the wage rate has gone up or has gone down. Will the number of people in that industry significantly change? So if the wage rate's gone up, if you need lots of skills and qualifications for that industry, it's not going to significantly change in the short run, certainly, because people need to be able to get those skills and qualifications. Whereas if there are fewer skills and qualifications needed and the wage rate goes up, lots of people are going to join that industry, or lots of people are eligible to join that industry. Length of the training period, we know for doctors, any medical professionals, really long training period that they need. So if it's a long time for the training period, we tend to see very inelastic supply of labour. If it's short, elastic. Vacation, this is a really interesting one. So if it's more than just a job to the person, we tend to get quite inelastic supply. So this one's really good to think about in the case of what would happen if the wage rate decreased. So if realistically speaking, if the wage rate decreases, we are going to see movement of people, maybe people leaving that industry, but it would be quite an inelastic change in the quantity supplied of labour. If it's a great sense of vacation, I think in jobs like medicine, like teaching, and there'll be loads of other jobs as well. People are there, they're like, oh, it's more than a job to me, it's my life, that kind of thing. Whereas there are jobs out there that people are like, oh, it's just a job, the money's the main thing that's attracting me to this. If the wages fell, I would be out of here. And time period, we have the same pattern that we have with all our elasticities. In the short term, things tend to be quite inelastic because people can't change their behaviour very easily, and then in the long term, we tend to see quite elastic supply of labour because people can go on training courses and get those skills required. So this is a diagram showing different elasticities with the supply of labour. I didn't show you this diagram with the demand of labour with different demand elasticities, but it's just the same as with your AS course. And then when we're looking at, all of these factors here, where I was looking at different amounts of supply to individual kind of professions, so different professions, but we can look at the supply curve for an individual person and how much time they're willing to give up in exchange for being paid a wage. And sometimes we see this type of diagram called a backwards bending supply curve. Now, there are lots of explanations for this, and if you go on to study at degree level, you'll look into the income and the substitution effect. But really, for this part of the course, I'm not saying take a shortcut. I'm just saying you just need to know a very basic explanation of it, really. So this is called the backwards bending supply curve for labour, and it tends to show that after wages increase above a certain level, individuals may actually work fewer hours. So we get this kind of like downward sloping supply curve at this point, or what they call backwards bending supply curve. And it's because employees can work fewer hours to achieve their target income. So they maybe want to earn a certain amount, £50,000, and then even if their hourly rate is increasing, they might think, well, no, I'm happy, I'm content with £50,000. And remember, there's only so many hours in a day, so every additional hour they work, they're giving up more and more kind of leisure time. So there's kind of that opportunity cost, and at a certain point, maybe people are a little bit unwilling to give up more leisure time. There's certainly only, so many hours in the day, so many hours somebody can work without, having serious kind of physical health problems, mental health problems, those types of things. So we tend to see this backwards bending supply curve of labour for the individual supply of labour. But generally speaking, the supply of labour for particular industries would look more like this. It wouldn't be necessarily backwards bending.